Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
You are watching Breakthrough News, and this is the Freedom Side. Welcome. Happy to have you here. I am one of your hosts, Eugene here alongside my intrepid co-host, Rania colleague. Rania, as always, great to be back with you.
Great to be back on with you, Eugene. A bit of a different look for me this week. What do you think?
That's true. It is a bit of a different look, but it's good to switch things up. It's good to switch things up out here. It's helps keep our viewers on their toes. Sort of like a Where's Waldo type situation for Rania. Good to have you. I mean, not in terms. Listen, I'm just going to move on from that.
So no. Can I just? I want to correct that. It's more like a Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego situation.
That's a great reference. I had lost that one, but it was a great show. Very good. Very good. Either way, it's excitement week to week. What's going to be happening next? Anyway, thanks everyone for joining. Happy to have you here. Have a great show as always. Since you are watching, or likely many of you are watching on YouTube, just want to make the reminder, or give you the reminder that you should go ahead and hit subscribe, then hit the bell so you can get the alerts for the things that you have subscribed to. So that way you can get all of our fantastic content here at Breakthrough News, which is coming out fast and furious, including dispatches from Rania with Rania Khalek. So nonetheless, lots of good reasons for you to subscribe and even more reasons for you to hit the alert button. We all have a lot going on, so that way you don't have to look far, work too hard to know what's coming out next from Breakthrough News. Rania, are there other activities you would like our viewers to engage in as they are watching the show?
Yes, Eugene, it's interesting you asked me that. There are some other things I'd like our viewers to engage in. First and foremost, make sure you smash that like button. It helps boost us in the algorithm. But more importantly, you can help support Breakthrough News, help keep us going, help us grow by becoming a member of Breakthrough News by going to patreon.com/Breakthrough News, where you can access exclusive content and also become a part of the Breakthrough News family and help sustain us. We are an independent media outlet trying to bring you stories from the perspectives of movements and those actually impacted and actually the reality of the situation, like what's happening in Palestine. And in order to continue doing that work, we do need your support. So please do become a member of Breakthrough News, patreon.com/Breakthrough News. We can only keep going if you become a part of it.
Yeah, that's 100% true. That's 100% true. All of your support for the existing patrons, we really, really appreciate everything you've done, everyone who's donated in any possible way, which has, made it so possible for us to continue to be here. And I just want to say quickly, this was yesterday, but I want to say it today, a story we cover a lot. Mumia Abu Jamal, political prisoner. It was his birthday yesterday. So we want to say happy birthday to Mumia Abu Jamal, who is still struggling for freedom after decades and decades in prison unjustly as a political prisoner here in the United States. He actually did a great message to the Columbia students that was played yesterday. You can find a lot of that online, and certainly some of our past interviews regarding Mumia easy to find here on YouTube or any other things. But yesterday was his birthday, so shout out to the brother who is still fighting, still strong. Well, we want to get ready to start the show here, and we've got a lot for you on the show. So if you want to go ahead and remind people that we are here, however you want to do that. I don't know if you want to, knock on someone's door, send a text message or whatever. We're going to be going all around the world. Of course, Palestine, southern Lebanon, the UAW struggle here in the United States, and auto workers who are really doing so much, the TikTok ban. It's an unending series of things, so let folks know. But we want to start with our first story, and that is really involving the issue of homelessness here in the United States, which is was in front of the Supreme Court on Monday, and a potentiality that there could be significant, we'll see exactly what's going to happen. But nonetheless, some things around what cities and localities are allowed to do vis-a-vis the issue of homelessness all at stake. So to discuss all of this and more and all of the different angles around it, we are very honored to be joined here on the show by Jesse Rabinowitz, who is the campaign director at the National Homelessness Law Center. Jesse, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
Well, it's really great to have you here. And I guess just to start, for those who maybe haven't been up to speed on the Grants Pass v. Johnson case and what's at stake here, what was exactly in front of the Supreme Court and how is it intersecting with homelessness policy?
Great question. The question that was before the court on Monday was, are people experiencing homelessness protected by the Constitution, by the Constitution's protections against cruel and unusual punishment? Grants Pass is a small town in Oregon. There is no housing, there is no shelter. And instead of responding to homelessness with things that work, like housing or services, Grants Pass gave people $295 tickets and even threw people in jail for using blankets, cardboard, pillows when sleeping outside in the middle of the winter. This is the most important Supreme Court case about homelessness in 40 plus years, and will really determine if cities can punish people for sleeping outside when they have nowhere else to go, or alternatively, the court could rule in a way that pushes cities to fund proving solutions to homelessness, like housing and services.
Real quick, as we discuss this, I mean, I want people to understand just how severe the crisis is in the U.S. I think a lot of people who spend any time in any U.S. city are pretty aware that there's a homelessness problem because it's very in your face, whether you're in New York or D.C. or L.A. It just seems like there's so many people living on the streets, but not everybody is in a major U.S. city. So can you just give some background on just how severe the homelessness crisis is in the United States of America, which is significantly worse than any other developed country?
Absolutely. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, there are about 620,000 people who experience homelessness on a given night, and we all know that that is an undercount. But according to that data, there was a 12% increase in homelessness over the past year, which is the largest one-year increase that we've recorded. According to a recent study from Harvard, half of renters in the US pay more than they can afford for housing. And the lack of housing that is affordable is the number one driver of homelessness in Grants Pass, Oregon, and across the country. Housing is just too expensive, and we know that throwing folks in jail for their inability to pay rent is not going to help them find housing. It's going to keep them trapped in homelessness and push them further into a cycle of poverty.
I think that's such an important point, and it's a tricky point because I think the way that sort of homelessness is framed, can be so inhumane, but also, just so incorrect. I mean, obviously there are people who have mental health issues, people with addiction issues, and they deserve help as much as anyone else. But it does feel, and I was hoping you could maybe double down on a point I think you were just making, that I feel like the way we even discuss homelessness goes so much towards the sort of narrative around driving criminalization, because we've othered the homeless and we've put them in categories of people that are considered lesser in the popular mindset in some ways, and it feels that like the reality of what's happening has been so lost for a lot of the rhetoric, and so people aren't getting the help they need, and also people are being stigmatized maybe unfairly. It seems like kind of a complex issue, but an important one to understand this criminalization drive.
Absolutely. There is a coordinated billionaire-backed right-wing movement to criminalize homelessness across the country, led by an organization called the Cicero Institute, founded by Palantir tech billionaire Joel Lonsdale. And they are successfully passing criminalization laws across the country. One just passed in Kentucky a few weeks ago that is the most egregious example. Not only does it make Kentucky a no camping ban or a no camping state, criminalizing homelessness everywhere, not only does it cut funding for housing, it enables people to enact stand your ground provisions to use force and even deadly force to remove homeless people from their property. These are the same folks that have their fingerprints all over the Supreme Court case. Across the country, we are seeing people who want to throw people experiencing homelessness in jail. I think what's motivating them is, of course, capitalism and racism, but also a deep belief that people choose to be homeless. And that's just not true. Homelessness is a choice. It is a choice made by our elected officials every single day when they fail to fund the solutions that end homelessness. But I've been doing this work for over a decade, and I've never met anyone who has said, I want to sleep outside, or when I was growing up, I wanted to be homeless. People sleep outside in Grants Pass and across America because there's no affordable housing. And unfortunately, like in Grants Pass, there's just no shelter.
I mean, seriously, these days it seems like if you scratch just a little bit at the surface of anything that seems evil, Palantir's somehow associated with it. Um,
Yep.
so obviously there's a lot to be gained by, can you actually elaborate a bit on what there is to be gained and why? Like, okay, yes, we criminalize, we jail more. How does a company like Palantir or others benefit from that, one? And then two, what's the pushback? Are Democrats pushing back against this? I asked.
Some Democrats are starting to.
Okay. Go
We've
ahead.
seen our
Go ahead.
champions like Cory Bush, who hosted a press conference with us last week in front of the Supreme Court to push back on the use of fines and jails to respond to homelessness. But unfortunately, criminalizing homelessness and punishing people for living outside is a bipartisan issue. And we need our elected officials at every level of government not just to reject harmful things like jails and fines, but actually to find the proven solutions to homelessness. We know that across the country, 90% of people who get access to housing that meets their needs stay housed after the first year. It works. There's just not enough housing to go around.
I think that's a great point. And I mean, I guess it builds into the broader sort of housing crisis issue we have here in the United States. And I mean, it seems that one of the issues that we're failing to confront here vis-a-vis the issue of homelessness is the very idea that our industry, to keep a roof over people's heads, is just that, an industry, that we're only producing housing for profit, and that we're, continually chipping away at public housing or any form of housing assistance. I'm wondering if you could just speak to that, because it really does feel that that's another side of the coin, is that we're criminalizing homelessness, but then we're, doing nothing around affordable housing.
That's exactly right. It's really frustrating to see cities like Grants Pass, where there is a 1% vacancy rate. There's just no housing. And we learned that Grants Pass recently declined to apply to a pot of money from the state government of $200 million that could build housing or shelter. So not only do they want to throw folks in jail, they're not interested in any solutions. And they've been very clear that the goal of their inhumane policies are to push people out of Grants Pass and play human whack-a-mole. And that is more and more common across the country. It's true here in DC, where I am as well. But the solution to this is housing that everyone can access. Housing is a foundational human need. Everybody needs to go to sleep every night. But that's the very thing that people in Grants Pass are being thrown in jail for, just the human need of existing and sleeping. So it's really disappointing to see elected officials say, there's nothing we can do, we're throwing up our hands and we have to arrest everyone, when every day they're actually failing to do their job, and failing to fund the simple, proven, and cost-effective solutions to homelessness, which are housing that meets people's needs. But you're right, there's just no housing across the country and in Grants Pass.
I mean, when you look at the housing prices in the US, it's just so insane. I mean, people are spending like over 50% of their take-home pay. That's like an under the lower level of what people are spending. And then also there's the fact that, I think there was something mentioned earlier by Eugene about the idea of who's homeless. Because in popular culture and in the popular imagination, as a result, we have this idea of homelessness in the US as being, people who are just like made bad decisions in life, and they're like, drug addicts and, just crazy people who have mental health issues who aren't getting helped. And, it's just people who it's all an individual problem. And that's not to say those people don't deserve sympathy. They absolutely do. Addiction is serious. Obviously, people with mental health issues should not be living on the streets. And that speaks to a whole other issue with our healthcare system. That said, I remember in DC myself having done some reporting years ago on the homelessness issue that included single mothers with children, who were on these lists just waiting to get like a housing that was paid for by the government, but it's such a long list and it's really hard. And so they're sleeping in parks with their kids in these really unsafe settings. There's families who are homeless. And increasingly, it's just, there are kids who are homeless. I mean, the number of children who are homeless in a place like New York City, for example, is so utterly shocking. So I'm curious if you could just speak to that. When we talk about people who are homeless in America, and I want to emphasize again, I'm not trying to say it's okay if certain people are homeless, but who are we talking about here?
That's a great question. Anyone could experience homelessness. We know that people of color, Black people, Indigenous Americans are disproportionately impacted by homelessness, but homelessness impacts everyone. The largest growing population of people experiencing homelessness is actually senior citizens. We're seeing a huge increase in senior citizens who just don't have any retirement funds and don't have any savings, who are now being priced out of their houses. So we're seeing people outside who are 60, 70, 80 years old and should be in nursing homes, but can't afford them. Their insurance won't cover it. And they are aging outside. People experiencing homelessness die early and often from treatable and preventable diseases already. But the fact that the data shows that senior homelessness should increase by about 300% by 2030 is alarming. And I can't imagine, like, it's cruel and unusual to throw anyone in jail for sleeping outside, but I think about someone's grandma who's just trying to use a tent when sleeping outside. The court case that's before the court right now could make it easier for cities and states to throw our grandparents in jail for lying down in a public park. It's the definition of cruel and unusual.
No, I think that's such a good point. And I guess it also makes me think, I mean, I guess from my perspective, criminalization of homelessness is bad enough, but, the sort of downstream impacts of giving so much more discretion to the police. I mean, I remember one of the things in Grants Pass is you can't wrap yourself in a blanket, like lying down outside. And it seems like some of these things are so general that they then also become just a general criminalization measure that the sort of, particularity of the police can say, well, I don't like the way that guy looks over there and he's wrapped in a blanket or something because it's chilly. So we're putting you in jail. So it feels like that's also an element of this, just the overall criminalization of our society by being able to put in these kinds of ordinances on top of each other.
The town of Grants Pass has been really clear that they are only interested in enforcing this against people experiencing homelessness. So one of the questions that was brought up in one of the court cases was, what if I'm lying on a blanket in the park stargazing? I'm technically using a blanket in a public park. Would I be could you criminalize my activity? And the attorneys for Grants Pass said, no, we're only going to criminalize people who are experiencing homelessness, which shows that, like, we're creating an entirely different set of rules for people who are living outside through no fault of their own. But I agree that this continues to give police not only more power, but more funding at the expense of social safety net programs like housing and supportive services.
Well, the solutions are right in front of us, so I guess that's why the struggle continues as always. But Jesse, I really appreciate you coming on and helping us sort through all of this. Jesse Rabinowitz, campaign director at the National Homelessness Law Center. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great day.
Mm-hmm. Rania?
Well, Eugene, I mean, look, if we start giving housing or building housing for homeless people in the U.S. so that people aren't homeless, I mean, look, how are we also going to send those weapons to Ukraine?
Yeah, and we do actually spend, I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but I don't, but the order of magnitude of what we spend on homelessness grants versus Ukraine is like fake. If you really want to know, I actually wrote a little bit about this a couple months ago. There's liberationnews.org, Money for War, but Can't House the Poor, an article specifically about this. Some of the numbers have changed a little bit because they finally passed the budget, but it'll give you a general sense of the orders of magnitude by which we will spend money on military weapons. I mean, you think the F-35, which is the so-called cutting-edge United States fighter, but it doesn't work. I mean, that's one of the most important things to recognize. The F-35 is always broken. It's never working correctly. It looks like it may never actually work the way they meant it to work. Just Google F-35 not working, and you'll be shocked. But overall, the cost of the program will likely be $1.7 trillion. So the United States is going to spend about $1.7 trillion on a plane that essentially every single person recognizes at this point is not really fit for purpose. And to the extent that it's used in highly limited circumstances, and you still see F-16s, F-18s being big workhorses, not that these things are good, but it just gives you a sense that this sort of game-changing weapons platform that was supposed to be the greatest plane ever created, and it's constantly falling apart. The F-22, which is another one of these, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but hundreds of billions of dollars, and it basically has never really been used the way it was supposed to be used. So, I mean, we just waste trillions of dollars on things that don't even work. Whether we needed them in the first place is a whole other question. But things that are like critically important, like homelessness, it's just, and also ran in terms of state budgets and everything is, well, we don't have enough money, but billions of dollars for police, billions of dollars for the military, but who cares if it's people needing homes?
I mean, look, it's just, again, I want to go back to like, what's more important to you, Eugene? The pockets of people at Lockheed Martin or whoever makes the F-20, whatever. I don't know.
F-35.
I don't know. F-35, F-37, F-46. I don't know. Whatever it's called, the Fs. The F-planes. Okay.
Well, you were right the first time. It is Lockheed Martin, F-35
Okay.
Lightning II. You were right.
Well, what's more important, the CEO of Lockheed Martin buying yet another yacht or housing homeless families in America? I just feel like your priorities are very different from mine. It's just, but you know what's incredible about that entire story is how like we're sitting here having this conversation and yeah, like there are right wingers pushing it, but God, Democrats are really bad at fighting back because they have the same interests.
Oh, 100%. San Francisco, DC, here in New York, all over the place. You can see that. I mean, I could name a couple cities that I think have a better policy, but, you see just as many Democrats out there in these major cities. And they're, in many ways, a lot of them have started this rhetoric in response to the right wing. So it's even worse because it shows how spineless they are, that they only really started talking about homelessness as an issue when they started being criticized by Fox News. Before then, they were happy to sort of let people be homeless. And since people were generally compassionate and not demanding they be all killed, it was like, fine, we just won't do anything for them. We'll let them live on the street. Then when a bunch of tech bros in San Francisco say, oh my God, we have to criminalize these people, they all jump to and salute. But go ahead.
I just wanted to say, listen, before we move on from this topic, the tech bros should not be trusted. Just because you were a nerd at some point in your life doesn't mean you're going to turn out to be a good person, one. And two, I just noticed, I haven't done this in a while, but I need to yell at our audience. Many of you are watching, which is fantastic. Not even half of those who are watching have liked the show. So I'm going to need you to smash that like button. Helps boost us in the algorithm. I don't want to get mean. So
yes,
I'm going to leave it there for now, but I can't make any promises for in the future of the show.
Okay. Well, they've been warned, Rania. They've been warned.
Yeah.
So now we want to move to Lebanon and the ongoing conflict there in the region, especially in South Lebanon. And we are very, very honored to be joined. Hello to our friends, you might say, by Ali Mortada, who is a reporter and war correspondent for the Al-Mayadeen network. Ali, thank you so much for being with us.
Hello, my friends. How are you? Hope you have a nice day.
Well, we're doing fantastic. It's really great to have you. Thanks for staying up late for us here. I guess I wanted to start here. You gave an interview back in November of 2023 and said that you and the other folks in the Al-Mayadeen crew were not going to leave South Lebanon. Talk about why it was so important for you to stay and report, and some of what you think people in the United States should know about what people in South Lebanon are living with right now.
Thank you, first of all, for having me, and sorry for my accent. I don't know how to talk English very well. I'm talking English in the Baalbakian way, not the Lebanese way. Anyway, the most important thing that I did by staying in the fronts, that I am with you now, and I'm talking to Western people to tell them the truth that not anybody say this truth. You are always our friends. We first of all, we don't hate the United States, the people of the United States. We hate the United States government like you hate it. I was hearing you about the homeless things in the United States and how they treat the Americans, and we are treated in the same way. But the difference is that they don't put us in jails; they kill us. And this is why it was very important to stay in the front line and to say what is happening on the ground, and to talk in English to make clear to all the Western people and not the government that this is not the truth that they are telling you. The media is telling you a false information, and the truth is that what we're presenting. So this was important. We are faced by threat, or we are threatened by death every day, every hour, every single second. Now maybe, and I'm talking to you, maybe a drone will hit me now, but we are not going to surrender because we want all the world to see how much criminal is Israel. Yani, this is weird for you maybe, but I'm happy when I see that those people, they put out their real faces. For 10 years or 20 years, they say we are a good country, we are a progressive country, we live in the Middle East, and the Middle East is a jungle, and we are the civilization. Now you see the genocide in Gaza, 100,000 between injured and killed, 40,000 killed in all Gaza, 7 months of killing people. In Lebanon, we have more than 400 kills. And this state is now in front of all the people, especially the American people, especially the Western people that know humanity. The people, they know humanity, and they know that this is wrong. You can't now say that Israel is an angel. Anybody, even that the guys who defend Israel, they are saying that we are killers. They say we are killers. We want to kill. So this is why it's very important for us and for other media to be there in the front line to say what is happening and to never surrender to the propaganda, to the Israeli propaganda and to the American propaganda in this war.
Ali, your English is excellent and very easy to understand, Balabeki or not. So I just want to give you that. Well done.
Yes.
But also, I think there's something else I want to ask you about, and that's the fact that Lebanon has this very strong resistance. You've been covering that side of things as well. I think it's so important you've stayed in the South. And I also want to let our viewers know that one of your colleagues, and actually two of your colleagues, a journalist, Farah Ahmad, and her cameraman, Rabia, I think was his name, were actually killed by the Israelis. I think it was back in either November or December. So my condolences to you and Al-Mayadeen for losing your correspondence. So it's very brave of you to stay in the South because the Israelis, we know, target journalists. At the same time, on the other side, one thing that you've mentioned many times in your videos is when you're addressing Israelis is that Lebanon has this very strong resistance force that the Israelis are quite scared of, that every day there's a tit for tat. Hezbollah is hitting the Israelis. Israelis have left their homes in the north. So I'm curious if you can talk about the strength of the resistance in Lebanon and how it's different than, let's say, even 2006 or even 10 years ago, where the Israelis are quite frightened of escalating with Lebanon because they are scared of Hezbollah.
Thank you, Rania. And first of all, I want to say, us Lebanese, we are very smart. We can learn fast, and we can find solution that nobody would find this solution. This is why you are now seeing the biggest army in the whole Middle East with his all F-35 and all his F-16s, F-15s, all his tanks is hopeless, and he don't know what he do with us, because we learn how to hurt him. We learn how to continue even if we get struck and get killed. This is why this is the secret of our strength. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon and they entered to Beirut. They didn't last for 6 years in Lebanon, and they retreat to to South Lebanon and stayed there until 2000. We hit them for 20 years. 20 years. They have the biggest army. So, and we get killed for 20 years, and we get bombed for 20 years, but we hit them for 20 years until they say, okay, there is no solution with those guys. They always gonna hit us. We kill them. We kill one. We have 50 others, and always we have operation and military operation. This is why they retreat. Now they have the mind of 1948 when they make Israel. They want to make the terror is the subject, the main subject. They want to make all the people fear from them and say we surrender. Us Lebanese, we have a history with them. We fight them for 20 years. We fight them inside Beirut. Until now, we are fighting them inside their lands. So we begin by fighting them in Beirut. Now we are sending drones to Akka, and we are threatening to send drone to Haifa. So if we want to read history now, who is winning? Us. We are winning. We are escalating. We are progressing. Okay, it's not fast, but we don't have the money that Israel have. We don't have the American government to give us all this weapon to fight with, and we don't have the American Navy to come to our border and fight for Israel. And for making Lebanon stop to enter the war, the U.S. Military ships came here in front of Beirut, and they say we will hit you. And you remember Biden? He say Hezbollah, don't. So 7 years, and we are doing, and he didn't do anything. So we have the mind that put a military strategic to deal with the Israeli military. We have the strength and power in the ground. The guys that do anything, do the impossible to make the mission accomplished and hit the target, the Israeli target. And the most important thing, that we deal with death, with smile. Us, the Lebanese, we smile in the front of death, because we are. It's a habit for us. Israel has killed us so much for so many years, until we are now, like, when Israel hit, we are angry to hit back and not to get fear. And this is why this is the main strength that we have. So in the other line, we have a resistance that know how to deal with Israel, that know how to fight Israel, that now, after 7 months of fighting Israel, when Israel invaded Lebanon, it was an operation. They tried to kill an Israeli ambassador, and it didn't work. So because of that, they invade us until they hit Beirut. Now we are sending drones to Haifa, and they are checking out and don't know what to do. They just destroyed houses. They just kill civilians. They are, they don't have anything to do. It's like a big man with the muscles, and he's hitting a little man, but the little man is always standing and say, okay, I'm ready to fight again. This is us. This is Lebanon. This is why we are winning, and we are going to win this war.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to ask, for all of your fans who are out there, what motivated you to put out some of the videos you've put out, the Hello to My Enemies videos that I think have endeared you to millions around the world?
Well, I'm telling you, because I'm watching the Western media, and I'm seeing a story that it's not right. They say it begins when they say the Israeli army said that we hit a military base for Hezbollah. I went there, and I found cows and chickens are dead. It was a massacre in the cows and the chickens. And I was shocked. So I make the first video on Hello My Enemies. Do you know what is the target that, especially when the Israeli hear that the Israeli army is saying that hitting the bases of Hezbollah, they shout and they say, "Oh, we are winning," and this is not the truth. They did anything. They didn't do anything. They just destroy houses. They just destroy. They couldn't do anything military. After 7 months from now, we are hitting. We make more than 1,600 military operation. We always hit every day, daily. This situation didn't happen even when they invade us. Daily operation between 5 and 6 operation. So this situation made me to talk to the enemies. So this is why I wanted to talk and smile and talk with the. Don't say hateful word. I'm talking very nicely, and I'm talking the reality. This is where the idea came. Hello, my enemies. May you have a very bad day. I hope that they have a very bad day. I hope that they died. It's not a problem for me. But I want to tell you calmly what is the truth. The truth that Israeli media, he never said that to them. And I was shocked by the video on the Israeli media, and they threat to kill me. And Israeli people, I don't know if you know somebody who live in Israel, or the Israeli army or the Israeli government. If they didn't find a glass of water, they will kill you. They love to kill. They love to. Every solution to everything is kill. They don't have to talk to you. They kill you. This is why I want to tell them it's not the solution. You are trying to kill us from 76 years now, and we are still here and we are still fighting. So try another solution. This is why I get involved in the Hello My Enemies videos.
Well,
I know that all. Well, I just want to say, I know all my relatives in the U.S. watch those videos. They always send them to me, and it's like you become a regular. They feel like you're one of their friends, so I'm sure they're probably all watching right now, and probably say hi. So.
I salute them all, and I want to say a word from the heart. I didn't expect that this issue, this problem, us as Middle Easterns, as Lebanese, that we have this people. We have thousands of people that they are with us. They are seeing the truth, and this is not the case. Before the war, I didn't know that they are Americans that know the truth. This is why I'm saying thank you from all my heart to every Western people that are seeing the truth and that are speaking, and they are making out what is clear that we are seeing now. It's a genocide. I don't know how they will justify that the French people can do resistance against Hitler and against Zionists, I don't know, against Nazis, and they forbidden us to resist Zionism. So Hitler killed thousands of people. You have the right to fight Hitler. But Netanyahu killed thousands of people. No, you must shut up and die. This is not how it works. And so this is why it's very important to you guys to talk. Always talk, especially that Western people. We love you. We are seeing what are you doing. And I swear to God that the demonstrations in London are more effective from the demonstration in Lebanon. We fight, you demonstrate. Let us fight. Let us make them taste our fire. But you must always talk, and we will do the work. We will make you proud of us. And I will tell you everything we will do in this front line to know the reality, and to know that we are very, very powerful, guys. We are very powerful. They couldn't beat us, but we need you. We need you beside us. Always talk, always share, always make us feel like humans, because they are treating us like not animals. I swear the animals has rights more than us Lebanese, Palestinians, and all who is fighting Israel.
Well, Ali Mortada, journalist with Al-Mayadeen Network, we are very appreciative to you for not only coming on the show, but all the work you're doing, helping us know what's happening in the front line. Thanks so much for giving us some of your time.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I encourage everybody to go, if you don't already know Ali on the internet, go check him out. He's very active on Twitter and Instagram at Ali Mortada. He does I think almost like daily videos that I think most people who watch this show will find quite informative and amusing.
Yes. No, fantastic work. Brave work to be doing that and to, put yourself out on the front line. And I really appreciate everything you had to say there, too, in terms of the worldwide movement and everything that's happening. So big shout out to Ali Mortada. Thanks so much for staying up late and joining us. Now we want to, speaking of demonstrations, move to the issue of the massive student movement that is sweeping the country, demanding that these massive academic institutions divest from Israel, protesting the genocide in Gaza. Of course, it all kicked off at Columbia University, a week and a half ago now. Time is flying. And we are very, very honored to be joined here on the show by Grant Minor, who's a PhD candidate at Columbia and the vice president of SWC UAW 2710, which is part of the Columbia University Apartheid and Divest. Grant, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to be here. Loved listening to Ali.
Yeah, no, it really was amazing. I feel like we have two legends here. We had Ali, and now, you are now a meme all across the internet, which we all love. You've replaced Bernie Sanders. But in all, but in all seriousness, Grant, I think one of the things that's important that's kind of getting lost in the mainstream media here is why you all took this step, what this encampment was about, why you felt the need to come out and protest, at this moment.
Sure. I think we have similar problems to a lot of students and student workers, is that our institution is deeply, deeply financially and politically intertwined with Israel. And since October 7th, we felt that we had to do something about it to promote, the values that our university purports to have, peace, justice, this sort of like liberal understanding. And to that end, we formed Quad, Columbia University Apartheid Divest, which is as you said, a coalition of a lot of student groups, including the one I'm a part of, which is the graduate or student worker union. And so we were wondering what to do for a long time. We were demonstrating. We had a proposal for divestment. We had peaceful interruptions of speakers. And the university refused to listen. So, in the end, we just felt that we had no choice left. We had to take the space, hold it down, and demand that our demands be listened to.
Well, I think it's huge what's been taking place. It's become worldwide news at this point. It's obviously spreading across campuses around the country. But, I think that one thing that the mainstream media has done is they've portrayed this as this horrific act of anti-Jewish hate, of anti-Semitism. You've got these claims that are backed up by no evidence that, it's become unsafe for Jewish students to go to class, that there's chants saying like horrible things about Jews. Again, no evidence of this. But I guess my question for you is, how do you react to people saying that all of this is anti-Semitic?
Well, I feel like a bit like people are trying to tell me that I'm crazy because they keep insisting that there's something happening, which is not happening. There are always random people that come to any sort of social movement, social gathering, who might say something offensive. But by and large, we are an interfaith group. We celebrated Shabbat. We had a Passover Seder. I myself am Jewish. We have prayers, like Muslim prayers. It's Passover right now. There's matzah on the tables. So thank you to my comrades staffing the tables for providing for me as a Jewish person. And the meme picture, is true. That's how I felt. It's just I'm just a Jewish student out to stand for Palestinian liberation. In terms of the encampment, it's a peaceful protest. We attended a peaceful protest. I can see on the screen right now. That is what is happening. We have undergrads coming out to dance. We have people singing. We have people chanting. We have cultural events. We have teach-ins. It's really, everything that I love about working at a university. Learning together, being together. And to portray it as some sort of violent protest, let alone a violent protest against a specific group, is just completely ridiculous and goes against what any sane person would see looking at this.
No, I totally agree. And the sort of cognitive dissonance you see on right-wing media, it's like 1 second, it's like, oh, these students are terrorists. And the next second, it's like, oh, they're dancing. They're so unserious. It's like whatever they can just find to chip away at it and move away from the legitimate, purpose of what's happening, is obviously there, the misdirection play. And one of the things I want to ask you about in that regard is, I think so much of the demonization is to lay the groundwork to make any form of repression seem somehow legitimate, right? Because it's, dealing with some issue. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what you all have had to face, because it's been very significant, I know during the encampment, but even prior to the encampment, I know that there have been some attacks and other things on Columbia students.
Sure. Famously, we had this skunk spray attack, which was a skunk, for any of your viewers who might not know, is this sort of chemical weapon formulated by the Israeli military, which sticks to your skin and your clothes. It's impossible to get off. You have to throw away every item of clothing that is touched by it. Unless, of course, you were supplied with the sort of specially formulated antidote. It's just this incredibly strong smelling terrible substance. I met with a student just the other day who is still experiencing health complications from this. And these students have been cited around campus still. So for reference, I'm suspended. I was arrested and suspended. I am banned from Columbia. Not that it stopped me, but it's just I'm seen as more of a threat to Columbia than these students. So that's one form of sort of informal repression by just allowing these people to wander the campus. But there was also this mass arrest of over 100 students, which, by the way, our suspensions are illegal and the arrests are illegal. Columbia had to sign a specific affidavit with the NYPD allowing them to come on campus. We pay. The students pay. I work there. We have a right to be where we want to be in the place that we work and we live. They told the NYPD that we were suspended. I didn't receive formal suspension charges until the day after I was arrested, I believe. So I'm not really sure what happened there. So if I'm a student who was not suspended and I'm sitting on the lawn, I'm really unclear as to what the grounds were for my arrest and the arrest of all the other students. It's ridiculous. The repression that we faced is purely because we were out standing up for Palestinian liberation.
Yeah, I mean, they really want to go out of their way to make sure that students stop doing what they're doing. But what's so comical, aside from the seriousness of it all, is that everything the administration at Columbia on up, like to Congress, to the Joe Biden administration, have done is just making it spread. So that's kind of hilarious in one sense. But also the repression is quite serious. And I know there's a lot at stake. But I'm curious, can you speak to what is the broader role of the student struggle in the movement for Palestine?
Well, as any sort of student of protest history knows, the student movement is enormously important in the sort of ecology of organizing. It provides, young radicals who graduate from college and go on to, be the people who, make change. Eugene, I know you and I both know people who actually went to Columbia and went on to be great, forces for change in our city. And I am, it's our hope that the students everywhere build these encampments, and organize. I've been seeing a lot of videos from across the United States, which has just like filled us with a tremendous amount of hope. We were down there at One Police Plaza getting booked, and we had no idea what the initial sort of sweep of the encampment was going to create. But I'm hopeful that the sort of push to divest on these campuses and the eventual divestment of these massive, highly financialized institutions will sort of break something in this exception to Palestine. Talking about Palestine on campus in America, and if we can win here, who's to say that we can't win elsewhere? Who's to say that these like titans of finance, like BlackRock, maybe we can force BlackRock to divest, and once it's like a single spark will start a prairie fire. It's our hope that this is what this movement is going to create.
No, I think that's a really good point, and I'm glad you sort of mentioned this issue of divestment, because I feel like in the framing of this is something that, I don't know, I guess the framing obviously in the mainstream media is ridiculous, so why would they say this? But, I was hoping you could just talk a little bit more about Columbia's complicity here, because it really does feel, and I'm now just saying this myself, so it could be fake, but this blossoming of these campuses across the country, I mean, it feels like a huge moment for BDS in the United States, that so many of the most complicit, biggest institutions in the country are now all of a sudden the spotlight is on them. And that in and of itself feels like an important turning point. So I wonder if you could speak to that general point and also maybe just say a little bit more about Columbia's own complicity.
Sure. I mean, I think these sort of institutions form natural targets because they have all these young people living, if not in them, then near them, in the case of like something like NYU. But as for Columbia, there's just flagrant ties to Israel. There's this weird talking point going around that there's like really no investment in Israel, which is not true. But even if that were true, even if we had no financial stake in the state, we still provide research to the arms industry through our laboratories, and we still have this like enormous like political tie to Israel through things like our dual degree program with Tel Aviv University, which brings dozens of ex-IOF soldiers to our campus, much like the ones who skunk sprayed my students, as well as the Tel Aviv Global Center, which is a sort of satellite campus. Which I would be remiss in mentioning as a labor organizer if I didn't mention that because this place will be in Israel, it means that they will be able to enforce their racist employment policies on us. People who are Zionists or people who are from certain countries will not be allowed to work there. And so this is really, it's a labor issue too. It's just ridiculous, and we just can't stand for it.
Yeah, I actually wanted to just very quickly ask you to respond to something, because I'm still kind of blown away by this. I saw that Benjamin Netanyahu made a video. Did you see it? No?
I have not seen
I know
it.
Eugene
I apologize.
Okay.
I don't follow him.
Oh, no, I can't imagine why not. Great guy. Oh, God, don't quote me on that. Someone's going to cut that, and there goes my reputation. But no, in all seriousness, it was quite surprising. I shouldn't be surprised, but it was just surprising because the gall of it. So Benjamin Netanyahu posted a video on Twitter of himself. It's like a 2-minute long video of him essentially denouncing the student protesters across America, calling them Hamas supporters, anti-Semites in basically the tradition of 1930s Germany. They're basically Nazis who aren't letting Jews go to school. And a lot of the comments were, there was a lot of sarcastic comments like, oh no, is he going to what's Israel going to do? Invade New York City and then blame Hamas? But I still found it quite wild that the sitting head of a country that receives all this money from the U.S. feels entitled to offer his slanderous opinion about American students protesting the genocide he is currently conducting. So yeah, I'm just curious, what's your response to the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu is now inserting his voice into this current movement that has swept the United States across college campuses?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised. He has a good reason to be afraid. We are, young people are one of the major ideological forces underpinning, American support for Israel, not in terms of the broader Jewish community, but in terms of the people who go on birthright. Enormous pool for recruiting people on college campuses. I luckily escaped that when I was younger, as well as what I mentioned about these political ties. And I'll say he is saying this just to fire people up in Israel and among the Jewish community who listen to him, which is myself included, not a lot of the Jewish youth in America. But it's really just like I said earlier, just a total flipping of what reality is like. I mean, something that frequently happens to me is that an Israeli person will pass by our encampment and they don't realize I speak Hebrew. So I heard them call me like a Hayot Adam, which is like a human animal. They call us human animals. And which I think was what they called Palestinians right after October 7th. And I thought that was, troubling to say the least. That the only thing I see is them painting with a broad brush, them painting us as violent animals, whereas we sort of have this sort of overwhelming ethos of peace and acceptance on our campuses. It's really just it's mind-boggling. And so I guess if I had to respond, he's come. Why don't you just come and visit? If you
Brad,
no,
I don't know.
No.
I don't know about that one. Yeah, I don't know.
Hey.
Well, hey, listen, anything could happen. Grant, before we let you go, I just want to ask you quickly. I mean, you are the vice president of SWC UAW 2710. Talk about the importance of, the original UAW ceasefire statement, the fact that at least I saw Region 9A, and I think maybe some other UAW regions have put out solidarity statements with the students. I know that folks there at Columbia with UAW have also been sending their solidarity to your UAW family in Tennessee, with the big victory there at Volkswagen. So just talk about the importance of how UAW has been, I think, leaning into this moment.
Yeah, it's been great to see the support from the region and the union as a whole. I'm enormously inspired by all the work that a lot of our members, both in the local and among the entire union nationwide, have put into organizing around Palestine. We were able to get a ceasefire statement out through through the international, which was amazing. I mean, I truly can't overstate how surprising it would be to go back in time 5 years, and somebody would tell me UAW has called for a ceasefire or called for peace in Israel Palestine, and I think that this sort of labor organizing has a wonderful role to play in this movement, especially in regards to these encampments, because we have a lot of UAW people very close, if not involved, in these encampments, and it's a great way to show solidarity. Speaking for our region has brought food to encampments and has portioned out funds for that. And as you said, we had the 9A is our region signed on to a statement of solidarity. So it's been very heartwarming. Our region president visited our encampment yesterday, which again is just I couldn't imagine this happening before October, and so much thanks and solidarity. And thank you for mentioning Chattanooga. We're all very, very proud of our union siblings down there. Congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it felt like winning the NCAA title or something. It was amazing. Well, Grant, we want to thank you for being willing to join us. I know you have a lot going on, a lot on your plate. For those who just joined us halfway through, Grant Minor, PhD candidate at Columbia and vice president of SWC UAW 2710. Thanks so much for giving us some of your time here on the Freedom Side.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Rania?
Yay to the students. And also I still cannot get over the fact that the Columbia administration caused this. I know it's all very serious. I don't mean to make a joke about something that's very serious, but it's a little bit funny. It's more than a little bit funny that their suppression tactics have resulted in lighting a fire across the country. So well done, guys.
Repression breeds resistance, as they say. So we will, on that note, move to the last note we were just talking about here, and that is the historic victory by the United Auto Workers in Chattanooga, Tennessee, who have organized a Volkswagen plant. I believe it's 4,000 workers. The first, I think, new company to be organized by UAW since the 40s, but I don't know. We're going to get all the details right here because we're going to be bringing in Hussein Karimi, who is a labor organizer and also a journalist with Labor on the Line, who was there in Chattanooga. Amazing video that he captured there of the workers celebrating after the win. Hussein, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. And, it's hard to even know where to start here because there's so many things to say or that I want to say that I'm thinking about. But, give us a sense of how historic this win really is, how unprecedented this really is in our labor landscape.
Yeah, no, I think you alluded to it. You mentioned the 1940s. It's the first new automaker where workers have successfully organized with the UAW since 1941. And the fact that this victory is in the South, where 4,300 Volkswagen workers have attempted to organize twice already in 2014 and in 2019 and have lost, this was a victory. And you could feel it in the room. So many of these workers were newer, but many had been in those campaigns in the prior attempts and just felt not only a weight off their shoulder, but the feeling that this was the first domino to fall, so to speak, and a massive new initiative by the UAW launched on the heels of the Big Three strike to organize over 14 non-union auto companies.
Oh, did Hussein freeze
Oh.
there?
Oh, yeah, I
Might have
think he
lost
did.
him. We'll try to get him back, but
The
yeah.
bosses are trying to suppress it.
Listen,
That's
if
who
I was them,
blame.
I would be too, because they're in trouble. And we'll hear more from Hussein on all of that. But yeah, 1941, which for those who don't know, was when UAW organized Ford. Major battle there in Detroit. River Rouge plant, the largest plant there, very significant, but a lot of hard fighting that went on to organize Ford. People don't realize that, people were actually killed to organize those initial Ford and GM plants. The Ford Hunger March in 1932, where they shot down the people who were marching on Ford for jobs and unemployment insurance and all this history, the sit-down strikes of 1937. And you sort of forget it all now because it has become so rooted in our memory. The UAW, it's one of the most well-known unions, auto workers, Detroit, all that kind of stuff. But there was really like legitimate blood on the street for workers to win those fights and to win those battles. And it was a lot of it when they first started wasn't even legal, because you didn't have the right to collectively bargain. So people were organizing, risking everything. And then even that we have. But I think we have Hussein back, so my little labor history lesson can end here. Hussein, you're with us. You can hear us. Well, it looks like he's not back. We need one more second. He's coming back. I got incorrect information there. Apologies to our viewers. I don't really know what to say now because I lost my whole flow there on the history of the auto workers organizing in the United States of America. But it is worth going back and reading more about it. There's a great book called Labor's Untold Story. It's a lot about the whole labor movement, but speaks a lot about some of those fights and some of those battles, which were extremely intense warfare type situations, but really changed the country, quite frankly. Is the sit-down strikes that UAW did against General Motors in 1937 that scared United States Steel into just agreeing to have a union. There wasn't even a fight. They just called up John Lewis from the CIO and said, you know what? We don't want any of that smoke that the automakers got, so let's just sign a deal. But of course, then subsequently, many smaller steel companies fought very hard, the so-called little steel strikes. But nonetheless, the impact of it was huge. The making of a modern America was huge. And now, as Hussein had mentioned, they're in Volkswagen. They had tried 2 times before, in Alabama and Mississippi. There have been so many different attempts to organize in the South, and they've all failed for a range of different reasons. Everyone thought this was against, all the governors came out, of Tennessee and Alabama and these other, low-wage states said, there would never be any unions. We don't want any unions. The governor of Tennessee even said, Rania, believe it or not, that he hoped the workers would consider the competitiveness with Chinese workers as they voted. That was one of his calls to the workers. He said, I just hope they think about the competitiveness of Chinese workers, which, and this is not a shot at China, but, there is no world. And even the wages they had before were higher than the wages they were in China. So it's a completely moot issue on so many different levels, but it gives you a sense of where, the sort of core, okay, I think we do have Hussein back. If not, all right, good. Hussein, I'm glad we had you. Didn't want anyone from Breakthrough News to potentially be thrown overboard. Anyway, you were saying, sir, regarding the historicity of this.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure exactly where I cut off, but I would say that just to pick up, they've lost twice in Tennessee, 2014, 2019. So the mood of the room wasn't just a relief for many workers who were there. They had been a part of the past 2 efforts. There are many, many new workers, because what we were told when we were doing interviews on the ground for the past week, the composition of the plant has changed significantly since 2014. A lot more diverse, a lot more of a younger workforce. And so the feeling wasn't just like, wow, we did it finally, but this is the first domino to fall in a potential wave of new organizing coming off the heels of the Big Three strike, coming off the announcement that the UAW made that they would be organizing all the 14 non-union auto companies whose plants are largely concentrated in the South. And of course, Alabama, they have Mercedes-Benz workers have an election date set in mid-May. Toyota engine plant in Troy, Missouri, and historic Montgomery, Alabama Hyundai workers will hopefully soon be voting yes to form their union too.
Hussein, explain what was gained from this. Like, what's the outcome ultimately? Like, what are the benefits of this particular outcome for workers?
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, I mean, Sean Fain said it best when he did a stream about the contract fight at Daimler Trucks, whose plants are largely concentrated in North and South Carolina. And he said, union density is destiny. And so the only way we're going to have power over the fat cats that rule our industry, who are raking in record profits, is if not only that we have 25, 30% organized, but a super majority of workers organized in that industry, because only then will we have the leverage to eke out as much as we can. Otherwise, they're going to pit us against each other and say, well, we can't afford it because we have to compete with this non-union auto plant in the South. And really, that's what's happened. These big companies, for the purposes of avoiding unions, dampening wages, having no voice on the job, they move to the South because they know, well, at least till now, they felt like they could get away with it. And for so many workers in Tennessee and really across the entire South, 4 plants already, workers at 4 plants have gone public with their campaign. They saw what happened at the big three in the raises that workers won, an elimination of the 2-tier system, a reduction of how long it would take to get to top rate pay. Instead of 8 years, now it takes 4 years. The elimination of temporary workers in some cases. So people who had been temporary, quote unquote, for 10 years, who were at a totally different pay scale than permanent workers. When, to me, 10 years means permanent. That's not really temporary work. Their lives completely transformed after the ratification of that contract, where they're suddenly, say, at $16 an hour, and now they're making top rate at $34 an hour with like excellent health benefits. And so these are life-changing victories for so many thousands of workers that, of course, impact the community. Another thing we often heard was specifically profit sharing. So at Ford and GM and Stellantis, or formerly Chrysler, they have profit sharing. So depending on how well the company does, workers, at least to some degree, reap the rewards of it. So specifically, I believe it was GM, workers got $13,000 in profit sharing checks. And at Volkswagen, they calculated based on how much Volkswagen is making in profits, the most profitable auto company in the world, their profit sharing check would be upwards of $20,000. Just imagine 1 year, you organize your union, you win your first contract, and in that first contract, you can be super aggressive. It's all take. And the margin of victory they won with, 73-27, I mean, it's a smackdown. And so they're going into bargaining with just all the confidence in the world, and the company knows it. It's not just like they won by just 1% or 2%, and there's disunity. There's a high degree of unity in the plant. They're ready to fight. And in that first contract, they believe they can win all the things that workers at the big three won, if not more. And that really can transform people's lives.
No, it's a critically important point, and dig into one other element of that. I mean, one thing that a lot of people have, rightfully pointed out, Hussein, is there's a large number of black workers who were working at this plant. That's obviously the case in a place like Montgomery, which has, as you mentioned, the historicity being so affiliated with the civil rights movement. I mean, talk about the impact of this, because, I mean, historically, the auto industry, especially in Detroit and places like that, has been a big part of what little amount of, quote unquote, American prosperity African Americans have been allowed to access here in this country.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important point, and it's definitely a part of the messaging that workers understand, are conscious of, and the union is promoting. You could, if you watch back at the launch video of workers at Hyundai in Montgomery, the theme of it was how this fight is connected to the civil rights movement in Montgomery. And the density of the black population from Alabama to South Carolina to Georgia, where it's 1 in 3, like you mentioned, the auto industry in a lot of ways, and really largely because of the labor movement, is one of the few jobs where black workers can enter without a college degree and have, in some ways, a middle class lifestyle. Obviously, that's eroded dramatically over the past several decades. We're seeing robots on screen right here with automation, but also outsourcing of production. and just the assault on the labor movement since really the 1960s and 50s. So I think the question you mentioned, Eugene, about how significant this is, not only just on the issue of workers' rights in the South, but specifically the fact that, I mean, the South is the home of the largest concentration of Black workers. It can change the entire political picture of the South. You were mentioning earlier when I was frozen, the total war on these unions by the Southern governors, the united statement by Brian Kemp, Henry McMaster, Bill Lee, saying we don't want unions in the Southern states. It's what's bringing jobs here. The nature of a fight in these states is going to naturally be a lot more political, and these governors, super racist governors, fear it because they know it can build a type of unity that can upend remnants of Jim Crow segregation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Hussein, before we let you go here, like I said, and we've showed some clips from it here, you had the great coverage from Labor on the Line. Where can folks find the work you guys are doing covering the labor movement?
Yeah, well, you can visit our website at laborontheline.org. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, where the kids are at Labor on the Line, and of course on Twitter, newly launched at Labor on the Line. All social media is at Labor on the Line.
Right on. Hussein Karimi, labor organizer and journalist with Labor on the Line. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Rania?
Well, that's some positive news. Always good to have some positive news in a dark, dark world. So
Indeed.
Yay for UAW.
Indeed. Well, now we turn back to Congress, which is just a black hole. So nothing positive coming out of there.
Do we have to?
Sadly, yes. Sort of like, well, I don't know. You like vegetables, so I wouldn't say
it's like going to the dentist. It's like going to the. I like how we both went to. I like eating vegetables, but going to the dentist is torture.
Yeah, so drinking castor oil, you know, some of those like old school things is some of our older folks would know, using lye soap, that kind of stuff. Anyway, long story short, we're going to go to Congress. We are very, very happy to be joined to discuss all the chicanery going on regarding this money that's been sent for war and other things by Amanda Yee, who's a journalist and the managing editor of Liberation News. Amanda, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always great to be back.
Well, great to have you as always. And I mean, I'm sure people have, well, I don't know if they have seen the headlines. There's been a lot going on, but this $95 billion for various wars, and I think they stuck in a number of other things there as well, including some related to TikTok. So maybe just to start us off, I mean, what is this sort of monstrosity of a bill that just passed, and what does it cover?
Yeah, it's basically like a huge military spending bill. And like you said, there's like different components of this bill, but it's all packaged up as a national security measure, right? There is a military spending part, and then there's a TikTok ban provision that they sort of attached at the last minute. This package bill passed the House on Saturday, and then it passed the Senate earlier this week, and then President Biden signed it into law yesterday, right? So think about this for a second. From passage through both houses of Congress to Biden signing it, this took overall less than a week. And that shows you exactly where the government's priorities are, right? Think about how quickly this was pushed through compared to other bills, bills that address infrastructure, that address student debt, healthcare, or any kind of public service or good. Those usually take months to negotiate and pass. That is if they pass at all, right? Oftentimes they're just indefinitely stalled, but this took less than a week. So that really shows you where our government's priorities are. And what was really dark and ironic was that when Biden signed this bill yesterday, which is overall like a $95 billion military aid bill, he celebrated its passage by saying, he was quoted as saying, "It's a good day for world peace," only to a few minutes later promise that U.S. weapon shipments to Ukraine could be shipped as soon as within the next few hours. Wow. So like I said, there's like the 95 billion military aid part, and the breakdown of that is 61 billion is going to Ukraine, 8 billion is going to Taiwan, And then we're going to send another $26 billion to Israel in order for it to continue its genocide against the Palestinians. We're sending more aid to Israel now, despite 67% of Americans supporting a ceasefire. And all the while, infrastructure is crumbling in the US. People are increasingly unable to afford rent, groceries. We can't afford healthcare, but we always somehow manage to have unlimited funding for war, unlimited funding for police, right? And it really shows you capitalism's priorities. And it cannot be overstated that the US government is about to start a third world war on multiple fronts right now, through a proxy war against Russia, through arming Ukraine, through its increasing escalation and aggression against China, plus the very real threat of unleashing a regional war in the Middle East through its unconditional backing of Israel. So that's the first component of the bill. The second component is this provision that House Republicans snuck in. It's a McCarthyite provision that would force ByteDance to sell TikTok or face a ban in the U.S. And this part of the bill was actually snuck in at the last minute last week by House Republicans. They've been trying over the past few years to pass this TikTok ban legislation. It's failed to pass and failed to gain any kind of popular support. There have been different iterations of this TikTok ban that have stalled in Congress, but they knew that if they attached it to this giant military spending bill, it would pretty much guarantee and expedite its passage, right? So basically, this legislation would give ByteDance 9 months to sell TikTok with the possibility of a 3-month extension if a sale is already in progress. So the passage of this legislation package, it reveals two things. First, that the US ruling class is more committed to imperialism and keeping the war economy going rather than helping its own people. The only people that really benefit from this kind of continuous war are weapons contractor CEOs, who have seen stocks surge from the war in Ukraine and the genocide in Gaza, as well as investment firms like BlackRock and Vanguard, who hold investments in Israeli apartheid. And the second thing that this reveals is that no matter what superficial disagreements Democrats and Republicans may have publicly, that these two wings of the ruling class stand united on U.S. imperialism and protecting U.S. capitalist interests.
Amanda, that's a really good point about noting the way that both parties came together for this. When they want to work together, they absolutely can. But I think another interesting element to the various aspects of this bill is how it brought together the various lobbying apparatuses. Is that a word? Sorry, guys. Wow. But it brought together the various arms of the sort of weapons industry, military industrial complex lobbies. Whether we're talking about the anti-China wing of that or the anti-Russia wing of that, it's often the same thing, but not always, or the pro-Israel wing of that. So I just think that's the interesting element when it comes to the TikTok ban, especially. So it's just wild to see the Israel lobby take on this issue of trying to get TikTok banned. On top of course, getting Israel, pushing for Israel to get more weapons and funding. So can you talk a little bit about that element? Because I think this is the kind of new aspect to this. I mean, obviously, there's been an attempt to get TikTok banned for quite a long time from the right-wingers, from the anti-China people. But now you have a direct role of the Israel lobby because they see TikTok as providing this sort of means of spreading information by a younger generation that is outside the confines of the corporate media. So it's calling it a genocide. It's telling the side of the Palestinians. It's also showing you what Israelis are posting to social media. So what was the role of the Israel lobby in pushing for this very anti-China measure? And why?
Yeah, I think that's
I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point in that TikTok is the perfect target because it represents this kind of perfect confluence between the U.S. New Cold War on China, big tech lobbying, and then this heightened public consciousness around the issue of Palestine among Gen Z, among youth, right? Those are really the three major reasons that the US government is trying to ban TikTok. And none of those have anything to do with national security, right? A while ago, I read this quote from a spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C. He said in March, he was quoted as saying that the U.S. should stop overstretching the concept of national security and abusing state power to suppress Chinese companies. And this is exactly what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
There are three major reasons why the government is trying to ban TikTok. The first is, the one that we've talked about a lot, which is the new Cold War on China. That the banning of this app is just another front in the US tech war against China. It's part of a digital containment strategy to really thwart China's economic development through tech innovation. So this TikTok ban can be understood as part of the same strategy as sanctioning Huawei or the US strategy of banning the sale of advanced semiconductor chips to Chinese companies. It can be understood as part of the same strategy as Biden's recent massive investment in US chip manufacturers like Intel. In March, Biden granted them nearly $20 billion in loans and grants to try and basically cut China out of the global supply chain because the US they just can't compete with Chinese tech. They're trying to save US capitalism by thwarting Chinese tech innovation, right? The second reason that they're trying to ban TikTok is, as you mentioned, Rania, like the power of big tech lobbying and just US capitalists trying to ensure American tech dominance across the industry. TikTok has 1 billion users worldwide. 150 million of those users are based in the US. And the overall time that users spend on TikTok now far exceeds some of its US competitors. And it's been pretty rapidly pulling away digital advertising from these same companies. So Silicon Valley represents a really powerful political lobbying force in Washington. Meta itself is a major competitor of TikTok, and they have actually paid consulting companies to create campaigns to depict TikTok as a danger to US society and American children. And so the US government is trying to force the sale of TikTok to a US company or ban it entirely, which would drive its users to US competitors like Meta, Instagram Reels, which is also owned by Meta, Snapchat, or YouTube Shorts. And, all of these apps are really struggling to compete with TikTok right now. The third reason that they're trying to ban TikTok, which I think is the most critical right now, is this circulation of Palestine content and Palestine content going viral. Since October 7th, youth especially have increasingly turned to social media platforms like Twitter, like Instagram, and especially TikTok to get real on the ground coverage in Gaza. And TikTok has led to the popularity of a group of very young Gen Z Palestinian journalists like Bassam and Mortada that people in the US have become really attached to and rely on for truthful reporting from Gaza. And people are learning really quickly that mainstream corporate media outlets are presenting a kind of just a distorted view of the genocide that serves U.S. government interests. And you can tell how scared the government is by some of the public statements that they've made, right? During the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing back in January on big tech, Lindsey Graham, during his questioning, he brought up how the TikTok representative in Israel resigned because supposedly he said that TikTok spreads pro-Hamas content and that the app is being used to help destroy the Jewish state. And then shortly after October 7th, the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, in a leaked phone call, he was quoted as saying, we have a major TikTok problem. We have a major Gen Z problem. And, like I said, TikTok is actually the perfect target because it kind of represents this confluence of this heightened consciousness among youth regarding Palestine and the U.S. Cold War on China. A lot of the renewed drive to ban TikTok has been pushed by the Zionist lobby or Zionist organizations. And there's been a real concerted effort to tie TikTok to the supposed rise in anti-Semitism and then trying to link that to China. So they're essentially trying to blame China for what they call an anti-Semitic wave sweeping the country, which is actually more often than not just people speaking out against the genocide of Palestinians. Um, the president and the CEO of the Zionist group Jewish Federations of North America, he was quoted in a statement as saying, TikTok has helped fuel a horrific spike in anti-Semitism that our communities are feeling every day, and it's time to take action. And, in the same statement, the group said, TikTok's parent company is beholden to the Chinese government, which has squarely positioned itself against Israel since October 7th. China has filled its state-controlled media and social media channels with anti-Semitic and anti-Israel rhetoric. And then I just came across this quote from Senator Pete Ricketts of Nebraska yesterday, and he said, nearly a third of adults 18 to 29 in the US are regularly getting their news exclusively from TikTok. Pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas hashtags and videos have more reach than the top 10 news websites combined. This is not a coincidence. The Chinese Communist Party is doing this on purpose. They're pushing this racist agenda with the intention of undermining our democratic values. And if you look at Columbia University and what's happening across campuses right now, they're winning. So obviously, everyone is really scared that the Zionist narrative around Palestine is crumbling. So yes, the US government has been trying for years now to ban TikTok, but the mass movement that's been growing since October 7th, which has, elevated the consciousness around the question of Palestine, especially among youth, is really what has led to this new push to finally ban the app.
Wow, it's just wow, it's through the looking glass on this one. But on a related note, Amanda, I want, before we let you go here, speak to, you were talking about the three legs of the war funding. I feel like the $8 billion to Taiwan has kind of flown the most under the radar in terms of the sort of general conversation. And obviously that's $8 billion to help them upgrade their military and buy parts. But, talk about, what's dangerous about this push, because I think that sometimes people feel like, oh, it's kind of benign, right? Taiwan, small place, China, big place. We're just giving them some weapons. It seems like almost benign self-defense. So, talk about what this is really about.
Yeah, this is part of China's military encirclement strategy. It's a major component of U.S. containment strategy toward China. And it really, part of it, it's mostly based around surrounding the country with a chain of military bases and hostile military alliances. And that includes arming Taiwan in order to thwart off the potential of what they see as a Chinese invasion. And I think they call it the porcupine strategy. But this is a really dangerous escalation. U.S. officials in Congress have, continuously been pushing for full militarization of Taiwan, urging the Biden administration to basically flood the island with weapons and employ what's called a porcupine strategy of basically asymmetrical warfare to deter any kind of invasion by China. Obviously, this is a dangerous and reckless maneuver that would effectively force Taiwan into an arms race. And, the goal of this military encirclement is basically to enable Washington to barricade China's military inside its own territory. And then through these sanctions and tech containment strategy, potentially cripple its economy in any kind of future crisis, leaving China with no other option but to fight its way out of containment. So basically, the arming of Taiwan is part of this U.S. government strategy to actively push China into a direct military confrontation. And that is so dangerous.
Either you fight or you capitulate. Here we are, nuclear powers on the brink. But yeah, that's where we are. Well, as always, we really appreciate you being willing to help us sort through all of this, Amanda. Amanda Yee, journalist and managing editor of Liberation News. Thank you so much for some of your time here on the Freedom Side.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Rania?
Amanda's great. Amanda's so great. I
Indeed.
love having her on. She really did a good job of putting together all that's such a crazy bill. The only thing the bill was missing, Eugene, was shutting down all the campuses where there's protests.
Yeah, and that was a close run thing. They also had in there the ability to seize Russia's frozen assets in the United States. So they were just tacking it all on there. But before
Well, they
go
also
ahead.
wanted to, well, real quick, they wanted to take the frozen Russian assets and use them to like send weapons to Ukraine, if
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
to give an
mistaken.
extra $5 billion to Ukraine. Although it seems like they might not do it because Europe doesn't want them to do it. A lot of different major implications if they do that, for sure. So we'll see. But it just shows how, the insanity is the inmates are running the asylum there in Congress. There's no doubt about that. And the president, AWOL. I don't know if you saw AOC holding his hand the other day so he didn't get lost when they were doing their Earth Day thing. I'm just like, Lord, it's wandering around the woods.
Imagine accusing someone wandering around the woods. Imagine accusing someone of basically overseeing a genocide and then like taking a selfie with them. Seems a little weird. Just throwing that out
Raises some questions.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to go out before we leave here today, Rania, and first and foremost, also want to shout out Albert for your donation. But, I was really honored to have Grant here and to have people speaking from the encampments. And, it's just so unfortunate, I think, that there's this attempt to paint this as some sort of anti-Semitic wave sweeping the country, but we know why that's happening because they want people to forget what these students are really there about. I mean, I said it earlier in Grant's thing, and I don't know, someone can correct me if this is wrong, but I've been involved in Palestine issues since 2002. I feel pretty confident about this. This is really the largest BDS action that has ever taken place in the United States, to have almost 40 campuses, I believe now, all out in protesting and doing these different encampments. And the point is all of them are deeply complicit in the genocide, the occupation of Palestine, the ongoing ethnic cleansing of Israel. So we have this massive wave of student protest drawing attention to that complicity and demanding that these ties be cut and that these ties and relations with Israel be ended, that an academic boycott be instituted. I mean, all the things that Palestinian people, by the way, have been calling for years, in fact. I mean, I had the benefit of seeing Layla Khalid in South Africa last year, and she said specifically about this issue, we love everything you all are doing, but we need to increase the boycotts, the divestments, the sanctions. We have to isolate Israel on the world stage. And I think that is partially what's happening here, is that some of America's most major institutions, both quote unquote elite and non-elite, state schools, private schools, I mean, whatever, Ivy League and, no league, all out here coming out very strongly, students standing up against the cops, the state police, in Cal Poly in upstate Humboldt County, they've been barricaded in the building for 4 days, and the cops haven't been able to get them out. They've had to retreat. I mean, a huge amount of bravery and steadfastness being shown by students. And I just say all that to say that it's not random. And the way a lot of the media and even some people, sadly, who are in solidarity with Palestine are portraying it as if like they decided to protest on campus as opposed to like the downtowns of their city. But these people have been protesting everywhere, all over their cities. They've been participating in the movements. They've been a part of everything. And now they're trying to bring attention onto their own institutions to say, end this complicity. And I think that this is a big moment, really, that this is happening. I think it's an important factor of what's happening now because it shows how so many people, spearheaded by the students, are now moving in a real way to talk about how do we actually end these ties that are sustaining this genocide.
Yeah, I agree 100%. As someone who used to cover a lot of the various campus divestment actions like 10 years ago, when I was back at the Electronic Intifada, amazing outlet, you should be following them. They really do a great job of sticking to this, even when it doesn't have the world's attention on it in terms of the divestment campaigns. There's been organizing happening around this for years and years and years. You're right, it didn't just happen out of nowhere. But there's also a huge radicalizing moment for a lot of people because there's so much happening in the US right now. We have a generation that is doing worse than their parents, right? They're coming out of school in debt. There's not as many jobs. There's not a guarantee of a better future than your parents lived. You don't have access to healthcare like you should. You're kind of looking around, the infrastructure is deteriorating. You have a crazy Congress full of crazy people that don't make any sense because they're all bought and paid for by whatever industry you want to name, because we just live in this like crazy capitalist, hyper-imperialist country, right? And so on top of that, you add a genocide to all that. And people are watching and they're disgusted and horrified. Israel's kind of the perfect encapsulation of everything America stands for in its most extreme form, right? And also, it's a demonstration to this particular generation that they don't live in a democracy. Because you look at the numbers, Eugene, we've talked about it on this show. like something like almost 80% of the American public supports a ceasefire. And they have been supporting a ceasefire for months and months and months and months, not just now. Meanwhile, you look at our elected members in Congress, you look at the people who run the White House, that's not what you see reflected in power at all. It's quite the opposite. So it's like this massive demonstration of just how anti-democratic the US is. And so you add all that together, you're going to have people being angry and wanting to stand up and do something about it. They are sick of seeing babies being massacred. Every day you wake up and you see something more horrible than the day before happening in Gaza. Now it's the, story about the Israelis executing hundreds of people at Nasser Hospital in Gaza and having executed people, including patients and children who had their hands tied behind their backs.
Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy Nazi level stuff. And so, yes, that's why people are out in the streets and are demanding that their colleges, their universities divest from this genocidal entity that is funded by their tax dollars by the United States of America. In fact, if they weren't doing what they're doing now, I think the question would be, why aren't they in the streets doing this? So it makes perfect sense. And what's even more stunning about it, Eugene, is to just watch. I mean, the president of Columbia really stepped in it by submitting to the insane McCarthyism of members of Congress who were interrogating her, and then getting the NYPD involved, and then getting, Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, involved. It's like this disgusting confluence of all of these different actors in the U.S. imperial apparatus, from, liberal to extreme conservative, coming together to try to crush dissent to a genocide they all support. And it's not working. It's actually only making the contradictions of the U.S. more apparent, not just to Americans, by the way, because this is now national news, but to the entire world. I mean, I was perusing the headlines in Arabic newspapers. This is what they're talking about, because the U.S. just looks absolutely ridiculous right now.
Yeah, and I also want to note, the students at Columbia College, the undergrad students there at Columbia University, they voted 76.5% recently in a referendum for divestment. And we've seen that, all across the country. I mean, it hasn't been covered as much, but in a number of different schools, they've had very large votes, in favor of divestment. And, it reminds me of something that, there's a press conference, and you can find this on our YouTube page here for Breakthrough News after the show, a press conference that was heavily of Jewish students pushing back against the accusation of anti-Semitism. And one of the young people said something I thought was powerful. And she said, I'm paraphrasing now, but I don't know. She was just talking about how it felt to have, in her words, the definition of some random rich guy about what's anti-Semitic determine what's going on at the university. And I think that's really important when you have 76.5% of the students voting for divestment, but then a guy like Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, who's an uber rich, probably a billionaire, pulling his money. He had a front page editorial on today, April 25th, of the New York Post demanding action be taken. Who is Robert Kraft? Who is Bill Ackman? I mean, who gave these? I mean, of course, they're individuals with a lot of money, but who gave them the right to determine what is anti-Semitic and then to be able to dictate to the world? And the very fact that these donors who are opaque, and anyone who knows anything about college, finance and fundraising, these donors who are opaque, who have all these just completely ridiculous, asks of the school, all these different things, that their voice overrides the voice of the students, that the actual constituents of the universities don't actually matter whatsoever. And it doesn't matter if a supermajority of students want you to divest, they'll never divest. And it says, to your point, that these are not institutions of academic learning. I mean, people have said about a lot of these Ivy League schools, they're really just hedge funds that have an educational component. And I think that's actually very true when you look at what's going on, these massive, endowments that they have that are behemoths in the capital markets all around. I mean, it really is just these are not educational institutions. They're sort of corporate, research-based institutions that sit at the nexus of sort of corporate and government power, and that produce a certain set of products, essentially, whether we're talking about the students themselves or the research that's being done for these big-time billionaires who control everything. So they always tell you, I mean, NYU, which you're seeing right now, they've built a wall around that plaza. But if you go to the NYU website, they have a thing about their campus, visit the campus without walls. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is completely ridiculous. There is no student power. There is no real faculty power, even the places where the faculty is organized into unions. It's all controlled by a handful of ultra-rich donors and the agenda of corporations that pay for research and, invest themselves in these research institutions by helping, different professors monetize their work and become billionaires themselves. I mean, the whole thing is just a total corrupt sham in higher education in America right now. You talk about the loans. Everyone's mad at the banks for the loans. Now, you should be mad at the banks for the loans. But my question is, why is no one mad at the universities? I mean, for decades, they were just telling people, oh, you can't afford it, just take out a loan. They were directly complicit in the creation of the student loan crisis. These university administrators deliberately steered students toward these loans in order to expand, their corporate gentrification footprints all around the areas where they are. So the whole thing is a total sham. It's a total sham. I mean, it's just hard to understand, but I think what the students are doing around the country is really ripping the veil off that. A lot of very intelligent commentary coming from them. I really do encourage people to go watch this press conference of these students at Columbia, mainly Jewish students, pushing back on anti-Semitism. They should put them on TV and take all these dumb talking heads off because they obviously know what's going on. It's very powerful what they were doing. So anyway, I think this is a very, very important moment. I think it's a huge moment for this country to start, pushing people to isolate more. And as Grant, our Columbia student here, protester, said, if we can take on Columbia, we can take on BlackRock. And I think those are really true sentiments.
100% agreed. I endorse everything you just said.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's always important to have your endorsement, as always. Listen, I'm trying to win elections here. Nonetheless, that will bring us to the close of our show here today. Big shout out to everybody for joining. Thanks to all of our guests. Rania, anything you want to leave our viewers with before we get out of here?
Yes, as always, you guys, I think Breakthrough, I must pat us on the back. Our whole team at Breakthrough has been doing a fantastic job of bringing you the inside of the student protests where we can. And of course, also, in addition to all of our regular interviews and analysis and journalism. So for those who are watching, and who already support Breakthrough News, we really appreciate the support. For those who have not become members yet, I highly encourage you to become a member of Breakthrough News by going to patreon.com/Breakthrough News so we can keep bringing you what's happening from the streets, from Lebanon, where I usually am, though I'm not quite there at the moment, but just on the road at the moment, but from Lebanon, from Latin America, from Africa. We're, always around the world bringing you content from the places that CNN is lying to you about. So please help sustain us, help support the programming we have here. Become a member of Breakthrough News at patreon.com/Breakthrough News. If you're wondering what you can do to help, that is what you can do to help.
Right on. I could not have said it better. Let me just put it to you like that. Great sentiment to end on for myself, for Rania, for our whole Breakthrough News team. We will see you next time.